To me, the strangest pick of the first night of the 2024 NFL Draft was when the San Francisco 49ers selected Ricky Pearsall. I did not expect him to go in the first round, as I saw him as a day 2 selection at best, and while some scouts have been high and hyping him up the last few weeks, I really did not think he'd be a first round pick. Somehow, he went before Keon Coleman and a couple of other big names. In today's video, we're going to talk about who he is. We're going to go through his record-breaking career in the state of Arizona, his up and down college career at both Arizona State and Florida. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football or the draft, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I could cover next. Now let's get started and talk about Ricky Pearsall. In order to understand how Pearsall got to this point, we first need to go back in time. He was born in Phoenix, Arizona in the year 2000 and ended up growing up in the suburb of Chandler to a very hardworking and athletic family. His dad had played college football back in the day, as he was a kick returner from northern Arizona from 1993 to 1997. He pushed his son to play football from a young age, and he was always surrounded by talented athletes in his youth league when he was a kid. Still though, he would manage to stand out and became a pretty big deal early on. At some point before high school, his mom and dad ended up splitting up, leaving his mom to care for him and his 3 sisters on her own. Her determination inspired him to work harder than the good athletes around him, and since he always wanted to be a college football player, he said, quote, "I think she is my role model just because of her work ethic and her character as a person. She's been there for me my whole life, so I really appreciate that from her." His favorite team growing up was the Arizona State Sun Devils, and since he grew up in Phoenix, it wasn't that far away, but it would take a lot for him to get there by the time he got to high school. Ricky would put in the effort though, and it was clear he was going to be a special kind of talent. He played multiple sports in high school, as he was both a solid basketball player and a good track runner for Corona del Sol High School. But his best sport was by far football. He played both receiver and safety for Corona del Sol, and also returned kicks, and used his running ability in the Wildcat formation. He made it to the varsity roster as a sophomore in 2016, and caught 29 passes for 390 yards and 3 touchdowns. His breakout season was his junior year in 2017 though, as he caught 74 passes for 1,100 yards and 13 scores. In one game against Gilbert High School, he ended up setting the Arizona 6A high school record for yards in a game with 342 and 5 touchdowns. He had 14 total catches in that game too, and it was a magnificent performance. After that, he started to blow up on the recruiting scene, as his first offers came from schools such as Air Force, New Mexico State, Hawaii, and Idaho. He didn't commit to any of them though, because he still wanted to go to Arizona State, so he waited. He ended up attending a camp with the Sun Devils his junior year and met up with head coach Herm Edwards. They liked him so much that they offered him a scholarship on the spot, and he committed pretty much immediately after that. The receivers coach at ASU said, quote, "He has an edge to him. He's my kind of guy, and that's who I am. I like tough guys and I like smart guys, and he's both of those. He's extremely fast and he plays fast. You have to watch him on a route, as he plays full speed all the time, and he's done that since day one." Ricky himself said, quote, "My heart was really at home at ASU, and I couldn't imagine playing anywhere else. I don't know if I would play right away, but I wasn't worried about that. I just wanted to come in here and show the coaches that I could do that, and trust that I would get the opportunity at some point." He ended up following up his junior year with a good year in 2018, finishing with 65 catches for 815 yards and 4 touchdowns. He had 5 games where he went for over 100 yards receiving, and he also had 4 rushing touchdowns out of the Wildcat. He also had nearly 800 kick return yards and 2 touchdowns, as well as 4 interceptions. He was good enough to be named a 6A All-First Team offensive player, and by the time he graduated, he was a big deal. He was rated as a 3-star recruit in the class of 2019, the 20th overall recruit in the state of Arizona, and the 182 overall receiver prospect. Because of his commitment to ASU, not many teams really tried to flip him, as they recognized he wasn't going anywhere. He said, quote, "ASU is the best fit for me because Arizona is my home and I have friends and family here to support me. I believe in the coaching staff and they have something really special going on there. I'm excited to be a part of it." So, how would Ricky end up doing at his dream school? Well, let's take a look. When Ricky would eventually arrive at Arizona State, he would get an opportunity to play alongside Jaden Daniels. He was the true freshman starter, and the two really didn't connect that much. Brandon Ayuk was the main star, and in total, Pearsall would play in 7 games. He'd literally catch 1 pass in each of those 7 appearances, finishing with 7 catches for 128 yards without a single score. In 2020, Pearsall would once again be limited, as he played in 3 games, but did score his first career touchdown in a win on the road against Arizona. They won that game 70-7, and that's what got Kevin Sumlin fired. In 2021 though, Pearsall would finally have his breakout season, as he quickly became one of the main options on the team. He had 4 catches against UNLV and 5 catches in a loss to number 23 BYU. His first big performance of his career would come in early October, as on the road against number 20 UCLA, Pearsall caught 4 passes for 132 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's the moment when everyone saw Pearsall's potential, but he would not have another performance like that for the rest of the year. He did have 9 catches against Washington State and did eventually have 2 touchdowns against Arizona, but for now, he was just a solid second or third best option on the team. He ended up helping ASU get to the Las Vegas Bowl, where they lost to Wisconsin, and in total, Pearsall caught 48 passes for 580 yards and 4 touchdowns. He also had 1 rushing score, and while things were on the up for Ricky, they were not for ASU. At the time, things were looking really bad behind the scenes for Arizona State, as both Herm Edwards and Antonio Pierce were in deep water. The NCAA handed out violations to the program, as they had apparently been caught with improper recruiting practices. They were doing this during the 2020 season, and Ricky decided it was time to pack his things and leave his dream school. It was not going to get any better, so he decided to enter the transfer portal. Because of his breakout 2021 season, there was probably a good chance that he could get some Power 5 offers. Eventually, he would end up considering 2 schools, as both Oregon and Florida really wanted him. He spent a lot of time thinking about which team he wanted to commit to, but eventually the coaching staff at Florida ended up winning him over. Billy Napier had just come over from Louisiana, and he said, quote, "Ultimately, it came down to Billy Napier and his staff. The connection was pure and genuine. It was Oregon the whole time, but then at the last minute, we had another Zoom meeting with Coach Napier, and it was so overwhelmingly positive that we needed to reevaluate. Ricky switched to Florida." They said they ended up making the decision based on the quarterbacks at both schools, and they wanted a guy who was most like Jaden Daniels. That obviously came down to Bo Nix and Anthony Richardson, and despite some thinking he left ASU for NIL money, he wanted to go to a team that would benefit him the most and help him get to the NFL and succeed. I guess they ended up going with Anthony Richardson, so he decided to transfer to Florida. In 2022, Pearsall became one of the better receivers on the team, as in week 1, he caught 4 passes for 67 yards in their upset win over number 7 Utah, and then 3 weeks later against Tennessee, he had a monster performance. He ended up catching 5 passes for 100 yards and a touchdown in that one, and they did end up losing late. 2 weeks later, he catch a touchdown pass in a win over Missouri, and then a few weeks later against South Carolina, he caught another touchdown pass. While Florida got off to a hot start, things ended up fizzling out for them. They ended up going 6-6 in the regular season, and Pearsall's final game in 2022 would be a big performance. He caught 5 passes for 148 yards and 2 touchdowns in a loss to Florida State, and they'd end up going to the Las Vegas Bowl. They'd end up getting curb stomped by number 14 Oregon State, but Pearsall caught 4 passes for 65 yards. In total, Pearsall had 33 catches for 661 yards and 5 total touchdowns. While he maybe could have gone off to the NFL and been a later round pick, Pearsall decided to return for the 2023 season, and now would be under their new quarterback Graham Mertz. He was expected to have a much bigger season, and to a degree that would end up happening. He caught 8 passes for 92 yards in their week 1 loss to Utah, and then had 6 catches for 123 yards and a touchdown in a win over McNeese State. After that, he padded the stats even more with 6 catches against number 11 Tennessee, and then 7 catches for 99 yards against Charlotte. While Pearsall had a hot start to the season, things would die down for him. He ended up having 3 catches against Kentucky and 4 against Vanderbilt, before a career-high 10 catches for 166 yards and a touchdown in a road victory over South Carolina. Florida was once again off to a hot start, as they are now 5-2. Unfortunately, things would become an absolute disaster for them, as after they got kicked around by Georgia, they lost 4 straight games to end the year, and they ended up missing out on a bowl. Pearsall, though, was solid. He had 5 catches for 55 yards and a touchdown in a loss to Arkansas, had 7 catches for 100 yards in a loss to LSU, and then had a monster catch in a near upset over number 9 Missouri. Pearsall would finish the season with 65 catches for 965 yards and 4 touchdowns, with 2 more rushing scores on the ground. Florida was pretty forgettable these last 2 years, but Pearsall did have one of the greatest catches we've seen in a long time, as against Charlotte, he made a absolutely absurd one-hand catch. While that was cool and all, he still was getting plenty of hype for the 2024 NFL Draft. He was seen as kind of a Julian Edelman type player, as he was quick, caught the ball, and seemingly could fit in any sort of style of offense. Pearsall also had decent production and was a very, very hard worker. Because of that, he was seen as a day 2 wideout and someone that you could maybe get a steal with in that 2nd, 3rd, or 4th round. That's at least where I expected him to go. Shockingly though, he ended up becoming a 1st round pick. Pearsall was taken at the end of the 1st round with pick number 31 and was taken by the San Francisco 49ers. In total, he'll bring 159 catches for 2,400 yards and 14 touchdowns. Pearsall was pretty surprised that he was taken in round 1, as he said, quote, "I was definitely shocked to see San Francisco pop up on my phone, and I picked it up." Many are saying that the 49ers actually wanted Tyler Guyton or Xavier Worthy, and that's why they ended up picking him, as both Pearsall and the 49ers really didn't have a whole lot of contact. He said, quote, "I think the only time I actually met with them was during the Senior Bowl, when you're doing little speed dating type meeting. But as far as that, I didn't have too much conversation and contact with them, and I was not really aware of all this." Honestly, based on everything I've seen on the internet, people do not like this pick. Many say that the 49ers needed offensive or defensive line help, and that taking a guy like Pearsall wasn't really needed. Especially when you have guys like Keon Coleman and Ladd McConkey available, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, as Pearsall was really honestly not that great. He only had 4 touchdowns in 2023, and by no means is he the greatest athlete or the most versatile receiver in this draft class. Honestly, it's a little bit shocking to me, but the 49ers staff saw something in him that made him worthy of a first-round pick. Maybe they think he's the next Puka Nacua, but right now he'll probably come in as the 4th wide receiver, and I don't expect him to do a whole lot in 2024. I'm pretty curious how his long-term outlook is going to be, but for now, I think it was a little bit of a stretch and potentially a wasted pick. Pearsall, though, is a really hard worker, and I think he does have what it takes to make it in the NFL, and we'll just have to wait and see. But what do you guys think? If you're an ASU, Florida, or 49ers fan, what do you think of Ricky Pearsall in the pick? How do you think he's going to do? And what rookie should I cover next? Be sure to let me know down below. Leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.